So this next episode of the CST-8 mechanical calculator saga, I have the keyboard. What's nice about this design is it's modular and the keyboard does come out. The keyboard, on the other hand, is quite a mechanical wonder in itself, and if I can at all help it, I'd like to not take it apart, because there are rows of arms in here that latch these buttons, and various other arms that then kind of latch all those arms together or pop them all off in order to clear either individual columns or the whole key. And there's lots of springs in there, and unfortunately the whole machine I was able to kind of get away with putting in a solvent tank, and took a bit of a gamble that the plastics that are used on the bearings, or not the bearings, the cams and bushings on this thing were a high enough grade plastic that it could handle the relatively mild solvents I was using, which is just gasoline, not gasoline, don't want to use gasoline, kerosene and diesel fuel. And I can't think of any other solvents I have in there. I think that's it. But these plastic keys almost certainly wouldn't tolerate that, and then they're probably paint filled with paint, and then the paint adhesion to the plastic is probably not that great. So the best I can hope for on this would be mild detergent of some sort, and the Monroe manuals do mention this. I think it's called Deft or something like that, and I looked it up, and I guess that product might actually still be made, and unfortunately I haven't located it. I think maybe it might be available at Target. Maybe someday I'll go over there and see if it's there. But until then, I think what I'm going to try and do is see if I can get away with just using soap and water, and see if I can ultrasonically clean this guy. I might also maybe try some alcohol in there. Maybe, I think the alcohol would probably not harm the keys, but the paint on the keys and the plastic. But I'll hold off on that till see if the soap and water doesn't work. So what would be ideal would be ultrasonically clean this in an ultrasonic cleaner, and unfortunately I can't do that for a hobby project, and the budget for a proper home ultrasonic is not really there. But so what I did is I'm probably being optimistic here, but what I've done is I've taken a plastic little tote storage container, sawed some holes in it, glued in some with silicone caulking some little food Tupperware cups, and sealed it all up with silicone. And it actually is watertight. Kind of looks like a very thin, clear Lego, doesn't it? And then what I have is a couple ultrasonic cleaners. I bought this one probably new many years ago, and it's been very handy for little mad scientist projects. And I happened across this one at like Goodwill or Habitat for Humanity for like $3. And anymore, if I can find these for that sort of price, I think I'll buy more of them. So the idea is you can put an object in an ultrasonic cleaner like a beaker with something, and the ultrasonic energy sound waves do transmit through the glass and into the beaker pretty well, very little energy loss. So the hope is to do that with this larger tank. Basically just make a larger tank. Now admittedly these little jewelry and minor little things like for your glasses and razors and so forth, home ultrasonics are not exactly industrial strength, so I'm not really convinced that the transducers are going to be remotely enough to really do anything on this, but I thought I'd give it a try. It's easy enough to try anyways. Beats the heck out of taking this thing apart, cleaning it by hand. So the idea is I'll fill this thing up with just enough water and ultrasonic it, and then if it pans out, I'll probably try and do that with the Carriage. Unfortunately the Carriage is a little long, so I'll have to tilt it in an angle and see if I can do that. So I'll fill this thing up with water and see what it does. Alright, so I've added probably what I think would be the necessary amount of water. And kind of one of the things to think about, a lot of people seem to miss on running their ultrasonics, is the water itself has a lot of dissolved air in it, gas in it, and that absorbs a lot of ultrasonic sound waves energy, and that could be otherwise used for you're cleaning your parts. So one simple thing to do is, especially before you put any sort of like a detergent in there, is to just run the ultrasonic by itself without anything in it, and degas the the water, and you'll produce a little bit more efficient cleaning result. So let's see, I'm going to turn both these guys on. That is kind of encouraging. I'm seeing usual cavitation bubbles and so forth, so perhaps there might be enough energy in there. So I'll let that probably run. It'd be nice if I could run it for at least 5 minutes. I think the right one has a timer that runs, I think, just shy of 5 minutes, and it shuts itself off. And then the other one will, I don't know if it times out or not. It might just run continuously. Maybe it shuts off earlier, but it has no timing function. So I'll come back after a while, and then we'll probably put some detergent in it and see if it actually does anything. Okay, so I've let the ultrasonic run for a while with nothing in it, and I still have a few bubbles on the surfaces of the tank, which is totally normal. Next thing I'm going to try is common dishwashing liquid. I know it's not really ideal. I don't really have much else kind of just laying around that I could give it a try, and I'm just going to put just a tiniest little bit in there, and I'm hoping that it will dissolve in this water well. See how this goes. Yeah, so far not looking very promising. Okay, so I've added some dishwashing soap. Actually, it's a hand soap. I kind of look at the labels of the ingredients on the dishwasher machines, and it looks like it has stuff that might be a little too rough on the metals, and it kind of makes sense. You got an automated machine that you're not having to deal with actual contact with your hands, and so they're probably planning on using some pretty rough chemicals. Whereas obviously hand washing soap is going to be a little more gentle, and I don't know what's actually in here. This could be pot metal, or I don't know. I know it's probably mostly steel that's painted or zinc plated, so I don't want to be too rough on the chemicals if I'm going to try and do it this way. And if it doesn't work, I can take all these keycaps off. I probably have to come up with some sort of key puller to keep them from being damaged. And I'm just clinically lazy, so if I can avoid doing all that, I'd like to do it. So we'll put this in here, and big thing is to try and keep my fingers from getting ultrasonic, because it wouldn't be very good on the joints in between your fingers, for instance. Basically, ultrasonic cleaning, you cavitate the surfaces, and it's basically you have a sound wave that hits the surface, and it causes kind of a compression of a surface, and literally the water cavitates and explodes in kind of steam, kind of the idea, and heats up the surface and ejects the material in a very tiny amount. It's like I say, it's not a really bulk cleaning system, and I'm kind of asking a lot for it to actually bulk clean. But the nice thing about ultrasonicing is the sound waves will go through those plates, and in between the plates and all the devices that are in between, and kind of get in these cracks and crevices that normal brush and rags and what have you may not be able to get to. The question is whether I get this large bulk amount of material off. And just kind of looking at it, I do see bubbles forming on the surface that are the usual cavitation. There's of course soap bubbles and all that too, but I've also seen cavitation bubbles, and those are the bubbles that will tend to kind of cling to a surface and kind of oscillate and shake about. And those are at least the larger ones that you can actually see. It's actually a bunch of little bubbles that kind of condense into a larger cavitation point. Probably something to do with the sound. It's maybe like a sound node or something like that's going on there. But anyhow, most of the cavitation you really can't see with the naked eye. But I'm hoping over time I can see if I get any results on this. The big question mark is, of course, making certain I don't generate a whole bunch of rust. So what I'll do is I'll fire up the air compressor in very gentle pressures, and maybe spray it with a little bit of alcohol on the backside. I don't get it on the numbers, and see if I can then, of course, flush and blow all that water off. And of course I'll have to rinse it with lots of hot water. The big thing is just not to let the water sit on the thing exposed to air for a long time. That causes the rust. I think there's a good chance it won't rust this thing terribly, and I might be able to get at least the worst of it on the inside gaps and so forth that I can't get to very easily. I may have to figure out how to like compress these buttons or systematically push each button to give it a little travel to where the next point where it had been sitting in the plates, give it a little chance to expose it. So it might take a number of runs to run this thing. The big limitation is that these are not industrial ultrasonic cleaners, and they don't really probably have a whole lot of accounting for running for hours, and they'll probably heat up, and so I have to leave the electronics and the transducers cool every once in a while. It looks like they're only set to run every 3 to 5 minutes, and for a normal cleaning application, that's really all that you need. I mean, if you need more than that, it's probably not going to work for normal stuff. And obviously, for this, I'm obviously being wildly optimistic, but maybe this will work. It's worth a try anyway. So I've been kind of running this thing back and forth in the machine, and I must say it's at least on the outside starting to look a little nicer. It's still a lot of bulk stuff that is just too thickly adhered on the face here to really hope to remove. Let's see here. All these guys still don't want to latch individually, but they do feel a little bit more free. Actually, the big thing is even just a simple water might remove the bulk grit, and a lot of it's because this is a fairly sealed flat surface. I'm hoping that the amount of stuff that's adhered underneath isn't all that bad, so I'm hoping that maybe this might work. I don't know. I always had some surface rust here. I kind of wonder if something had been dripping on it for all those years. So I do see a little surface rust that was there before all this stuff, and of course it's probably made it look a little more noteworthy because of it sitting here. That little bit of powdered material is maybe reacting. I don't know, but I think it's making some progress. The water is certainly getting dirty. Just as kind of a ooh view, I flipped it back in there, and you can see this kind of a slimy material starting to ooze off the surfaces, and that's a really good indicator that the ultrasonic is actually doing some good dissolving of materials. You can kind of see this stuff kind of ooze up out of all those little slots, and it just kind of generates this little fog of heavier, oilier material in there, and it's kind of interesting. It's always neat. If you ever have used one of these things or buy one and use it for cleaning your eyeglasses, it's fascinating to see the oils that accumulate on the lenses and the interface of the frame. It kind of makes you go, ugh. But yeah, I think it's actually, just based on that, it's actually kind of encouraging. I'm really seeing quite a little fog of oil lifting up off those surfaces. Maybe. I flipped it a couple times and I might have missed it, or things have finally reached a critical dissolving point. Okay, as a test idea, like I say, clinically lazy, and I have this one gear here that's really seized up. Everyone else moves very nicely, except for this one guy. I don't see anything special about him as far as why he wouldn't be movable. There seems to be nothing interacting with him. I'm even vague as exactly how it works, because it doesn't seem to interact with this guy. It doesn't interact with this guy. It doesn't seem to be mounted permanently on this shaft. So my guess is it really is seized up for some reason, why this particular one is. And I've tried putting penetrating oil and so forth in it, and I don't really want to take this thing apart if I can at all help it. So I'm going to try something a little radical. I'm going to try heating it up, and if that doesn't work, I might try cooling it. And I'm going to see if I can burn out or break the rust or the dried oil. So I got a old school heating soldering gun here, and it's pretty high wattage. I don't know if it's going to really do the trick, but it's worth a try. Let's see if I can get it in there. And good luck. See here if I can heat it up enough to actually do anything. My guess is it'll probably never heat it enough to make a difference. It's worth a try anyway. So, there was some adjustments. I finally got this iron to actually heat up. Give this a try for a little while, see if I can generate lots of extra smoke. I'm getting plenty of smoke from the old lead and rosin. Let's see if I can really not solder this thing closed. I guess maybe I should consider that a potential problem. Expecting some great billows of smoke here and so far. I guess once you see some burning oil, you know you may be getting somewhere, but so far no burning oil. Well, I know that's a big heat sink. I think I'm finally seeing a little smoke. There, I'm seeing smoke. So I'm heating this thing up enough to where I'm probably heating up the oil. I think I'll go with this kind of incrementally and see if that might do something. Oh! Wow, that's the most I've ever seen it move by. Hey. Assuming I haven't ruined it completely. Well, it's seized back up again, so apparently there's a bit of waxiness to it. So I will hit it again. I've never heard of anybody doing something as goofy as this, so maybe this is a new method that might actually work. Because that's the most I've ever seen that guy move by. I was turning it so hard that I was worried I might damage the shaft early on and trying to release it, and of course all the penetrating oil in the world and so forth didn't seem to be making any difference. This machine has been pretty rust free, other than there's a few drops or a few spots of rust kind of in a column slightly to the right of this gear, as a matter of fact, and also you could kind of see it on the keyboard. So I'm wondering if this thing was in a relatively dry and benign environment, except for maybe there was something dripping on it from time to time, like rained or something, the roof leaked or something. Oh, it's making progress. Unfortunately, the waxy lubricant's going to solidify again, but hey, it's solidified again. Maybe what I can do is let it cool a safe amount, and then I'll apply oil and or some sort of solvent, and then heat it again. And if I keep working it back and forth and teasing it, maybe I can get it to work. So that's pretty encouraging. It's an interesting idea. Well, this is kind of one of those happy endings, it looks like. Quite a few cycles with the soldering iron, and I'm surprised I got basically no smoke. I guess I never probably heated it up enough to get the oil to a burning temperature. I was expecting great gobs of toxic smoke coming off this thing. The only smoke I ever saw was the initial smoke that you get from the rosin core or what have you of the soldering. It was originally in the soldering iron. Took quite a few cycles. Each cycle I probably would have the iron on there for about a minute or two at the most, pretty much the limit of what my trigger finger and wrist could handle. And then when I wait for it to go to a little bit cooler, safer temperature, I'd apply with a Q-tip, so I wasn't spraying great gobs of stuff everywhere. A little bit of penetrating oil, and even tried some WD-40. I know people don't seem to like WD-40, but and then alternately I would apply some clock oil. I've been using clock oil for lubricating this guy. Works pretty good, and it's getting pretty close to what the other guys go at. It's not quite there, but it's getting close. It's interesting that as you heat it up and you give it a twist, and it would start to move, and if you try to twist the other way, it would seize up more, and it's probably the viscosity of the oil would kind of stretch it one way, and then you push it the other way, bunch together, and almost act like a ratcheting gear kind of a thing, like a derailleur on a 10-speed bike or something. So anyhow, it's getting closer and closer. It's not quite normal, but it's making progress. So I've been able to, looks like, successfully. It looked pretty hopeless. Like I'd have to take this thing apart, because initially twisting it, I thought I was going to break the shaft. It was so bad. And but after initially heating it, it would soften that shellac, dried out stuff in there a little bit, and melt it a little bit and allow it to move a little bit, and then quite a few cycles of heating it and moving it back and forth, teasing it, and then letting it cool, put a few drops of oil or a solvent in there, heat it back up again, expecting great gobs of smoke and not really getting anything. So there's quite a bit of a heat sink here, so trying to heat everything up is, the reality is a lot of metal here, and that soldering iron doesn't have that much wattage, but it's enough to have made a difference to where it heated that dried up stuff and melted it enough to allow some solvent to get in there. And that's looking a lot better. Wow, I'll have to remember this. I had toyed with the idea of putting a few drops of water in there, because sometimes water is actually a pretty good battler of rust. If water causes the rust, water might break the rust break. At least that's what my dad said. And I tried it with some tools and it worked. So my dad probably knew what he was talking about. That looks good. So I think that's one for the thing there, is to if you can heat it carefully with soldering iron, and see if you can get that waxy stuff to melt a little bit, and then slowly tease it out. So yay, you don't have to take this thing apart. Okay, after running this guy and flipping it and pushing buttons and everything, things are actually looking pretty good. I thought this was probably an idea that wasn't going to work, and it's actually looking pretty good. I'm really doing, I think it's been a pretty nice weekend, actually, afternoon. So the keys would have troubles, you know, all of them would stick and have troubles and so forth, and now it looks like everybody up to the last, the last two, I think, are still, the last two have a little bit of trouble, and it could be due to wear, because those are the columns that would probably get pushed all the time. Everyone else go past that are really good. Can't complain. These last two, and I think it's these bales that are on the inside, those two I don't think are rotating quite right still. They're a little bit stiff. So once I blow these off and of water and clean it out a little bit, rinse it, give it a little bit of oil, maybe these I guess actually two first columns might work better. But right now, considering there's no water other than a little bit of soap, every column but the first two are actually doing very nicely. And if you pull on those bales and pop them in there, they will work. So that's pretty nice. So I think I'll rinse it off real good, very gently blow it off with compressed air to kind of dry it. Maybe put a little dab of alcohol behind it to help absorb the water and blow it away. And I will oil this guy and see if see how it works. Well, I'm feeling a bit emboldened after the keyboard looking pretty good so far. I'm obviously still going to oil it and probably some other adjustments, so I'm thinking, let me give this a quick preliminary effort on the Carriage. The Carriage, I think, overall isn't really all that bad. Everything seems to move. Maybe the reset of the registers, those arms might be a little, or shafts might be a little stiff. It's generally just cruddy and dirty. Yeah, all the numbers seem to move. So I guess while I got some cruddy, dirty water in there, I'll save the environment some water use, and I'll get the initial dirt off this guy, and then I'll change the water in the UltraSonic, and maybe give it a second run with some clean water, and hopefully those numbers will clear up nicely, and it'll be just as good a result as the keyboard. Of course, the machine, the Carriage is a bit big. The tank, I wish I could have come across something a little longer, but well, not so bad for a I mean, it cost $1 at Big Lots, so not too bad. So we'll run this guy, and then we'll flip it the other way and run it. Already I'm seeing all kinds of schmooze starting to ooze out. There's spots there. And like I say, this guy isn't really that bad, so I'm hoping that I can... Ooh, look at all that. Hopefully I can clean him up. What's nice so far is the keyboard didn't, explode and rust. So I'm hoping that I don't do severe case of rust destruction here too. I think it's one of those things that people get freaked out about, steel and water, but as long as you dry it off fairly quickly, it's not a big deal. It's when you let it sit for days in the air that's it's wet that's going to cause trouble. But yeah, it looks kind of neat. I never quite get enough of looking at an ultrasonic. And yeah, I'm really surprised that this little cheap rig up is actually doing a lot better than I would have thought. I mean, the power of these transducers is a fraction of an industrial unit, but that's not so bad. And all kinds of stuff is starting to come smoking, oozing off the surfaces. Like I say, it's always fun to watch. So flip it back and forth a few times until the water gets really gross, and then I'll change the water out and run it some more, and then do the same thing with very lightly compressed air. There's a lot more exposed springs on this thing, so I'll have to be a lot more careful than say the keyboard where everything appears to be pretty well captured. So it's proved to be a fairly productive afternoon, weekend. Sometimes this can be fun. Actually, it's very rewarding to see these things slowly come back to life. Well, I'd say overall that's pretty good. I've run this thing back and forth a number of times. The water is getting quite black. And I'd say at this point we're pretty much got about as all we're going to get out of this guy. So I think it's, at this point it's, rinse this guy off with a bit of fresh water. And then very gently, because this definitely has, maybe rinse it real quick with just some, rubbing alcohol. Because I think that'll be pretty safe with these numbers. Maybe maybe I won't, I don't know. I'm just not sure how, the keyboard, tolerated a little dash of alcohol just fine, but these guys sure look like they're really thin, painted on guys. It's one of those things that I've heard of radio decals that are water soluble being ruined, so luckily so far it looks like we're okay on that. There's a bit of surface rust that was there originally. It's interesting to actually see how, especially on the heavier plates in the machine itself, or of course I haven't dipped it in water, how the zinc plating is kind of popped off in spots, and there's a little more deeper rust pits in those spots from decades. Even in my dry climate, things will, I guess, slowly rust if you give it a kind of a damp environment. And this guy looked like there was at least one location where it was kind of dripping on, and that's what caused that one gear to really seize up, I suspect. So a little bit of light blowing off and maybe some alcohol, I'm not sure. And this looks a heck of a lot nicer. The numbers are so much more visible. Well, I'd say overall it came out pretty good. The keycaps had still kind of a visible little kind of a gray haze that I think, I don't know what it is exactly, what this machine was exposed to. You can see there definitely was some surface rust there, and I was hoping it was just some kind of crud that adhered to it, but it was some sort of a thin surface rust. And I was hoping there was some dirt that would go away, but apparently it isn't. So, and this is underneath the plastic bezel, so it could be that water and so forth was collecting there a little bit and caused a little bit of rust that normally you wouldn't have. All the keys seem to work very nicely now. I put a little dab of oil on everybody, as much as tiniest little bit of oil. I bought this jug of oil from a clock shop, and I was, interesting enough, I was expecting some I was expecting some elderly, you know, Swiss or German clock repairman, and this guy was, I think he's from maybe Cambodia or Laos or someplace like that. He had been in the country since, you know, the Vietnam War, and hard to still communicate with the guy, but it cost me $5. I thought it was a little much, but it's been pretty good oil so far. So if you're thinking about lubricating your machine, consider clock oil. It's nice as this long little syringe tube you can get in all kinds of places, and this guy, it's been really nice. And for this entire project so far, that's all the oil I've used, of which about half of that consumption so far has just been lubricating the keyboard and the carriage. And the thing is, of course, once you've if indeed you really want to do this method of dipping it in water, I have to admit I'm still kind of reluctant to actually recommend it. The obvious thing is to dry it off as quickly as you can. You know, carefully, maybe with a hair dryer or a space heater. Obviously, makes sure you don't melt the plastic and so forth. The last two keys rows are still having a little trouble, and it looks like these two zero keys, if they're down just a little bit, allow it to work. So everyone else works very nicely now. Before, obviously, nobody was doing anything terribly well. So I'd say that's pretty nice. Obviously, the big thing is you got all these little bits of felt back there. I put it in front of the space heater for quite a while to dry the felt out, and I think it's pretty well dry now. And what little bit of water there is, it'll dry off. You can still see this kind of, I don't know, it could be zinc oxide, and maybe I've stirred it up from UltraSonic, but it seems like it was on the whole of the more visible surfaces like this previously. So I don't know, maybe it's like salt of some sort. Maybe they had it in a storage area that had some de-icer for sidewalks or something. I'm not sure what this film is. Hopefully it's not bad, because I've been sometimes not wearing gloves now that I don't feel so you know, gross by it. And same thing with this guy, little dabs of oil, and kind of watch for spots that might wick a lot of water. I've been making certain that this guy has kind of been sitting there in half state there to get that water that might be trapped in there out, and put oil in as early as you can. I've actually put oil in while it's still a little bit wet, and the oil will kind of help drive the water out and vice versa. Everything seems to be moving very nicely. All the numbers move. They didn't really have too much trouble to begin with. I had one here, it's a little stiff. I think that's the stiff one. The canceling mechanisms are kind of working. I'm not sure. I've kind of moved on them, and the revolutions counter has cleared once. This guy almost kind of wants to clear. I might have to look into that a little bit more. I think, looking at the arms, I'm not sure if they both pull down for clearing this guy and only one arm pulls down to clear this guy. I'm kind of thinking that's what I'm seeing when I've been playing with that part, now that I got that kind of running. So it looks a lot nicer, and I don't know if I can seriously recommend dipping it in water, but it seemed to work for me, so I'm pretty happy with that so far.